happy about it.
I think you more than let yourself be assigned.
Welcome to Access Reality. Tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing a friend, an author, a community educator, Paul Kivel. Welcome, Paul, to the show.
Hi, Barry. I'm glad to be with you tonight.
Thank you. Paul's books are numerous. The three that I've chosen to talk about tonight with you, or asking you to please talk to us about, are sort of in the sequence that you wrote them, just to be chronological and orderly. Men's Work was the book that I read first. I know there are two books that have preceded this, but Paul's book, I'll give it this a shot. Men's Work was a book about men and masculinity. Yes, was a book about men and masculinity. The very stuff. Sorry, this is the better angle for the book shot. This one was the book that deals with men's roles and the changes and violence and the things that we're concerned about and we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The second book, and the one that I use in my classes all the time, I dare say I wasn't prepared to use this book first, but Uprooting Racism, dealing with how white people may be allies and work with people of color to combat racism, mm-hmm. was absolutely thrilling and has been very well received by the training community, by the social change community. The one that I've just been reading and I find to be intriguing, and so will our audience, and the one I think you'll be talking about this summer at the NOMAS conference, is Boys Will Be Men.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of interested in having you mention for the audience's sake how you made the transition from men's work and the general critique of violence that men either perpetrate or fail to interrupt, to your racism book, which is the next book that came out, to a book on parenting boys. How do those transitions take place in your life and in your professional life as a writer?
Well, let me go back a little bit and talk about the beginnings of the work. In the late 70s, a group of us who were men in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, were getting together to talk about our lives, about relationships, what worked, what didn't work. And we realized that a lot of what didn't work had to do with how we were raised to be men. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the women's movement, particularly the battered women's movement, rape prevention movement, child sexual assault movement, were dealing with the victims of male violence. They were talking to the survivors, trying to provide resources, trying to get information out.
Yeah.
And I think as a country, we became aware of the devastating impact of male violence. So as a group, we decided that we wanted to do something about that, put together our understanding about male socialization, go out to talk to men, talk to young people, and look at gender roles and violence and how do we stop the violence. Mm-hmm. So in 1979, we started the Oakland Men's Project.
Let me just interrupt to say that mm-hmm. I was in New York City this summer with my son, mm-hmm. and we went to the United Nations. And I went just for curiosity to see what the world was doing on the issue of men's violence. And the only organization mentioned as a resource in the book in the United Nations Library was the Oakland Men's Project.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to hear.
I was thrilled to see that.
It's not good to hear there weren't a whole lot of others.
That's true.
Because
that's how important the Oakland Men's Project mm-hmm. and the work you started has been to the nation and to the world.
Right. Well, one of the things we realized very quickly in a multicultural society is that you can't just be talking about gender without talking about race and class and sexual identity.
Slow down. We can't talk about gender without simultaneously talking about race and gender.
And class.
And class, I'm sorry. Sexual identity.
Because, and we learned this from the women's movement. When the women's movement started out, it's talking about women. And then women of color said, well, wait a second, our experience is different.
Right.
And poor and working class women said, wait a second, you can't make generalizations about women without talking about the differences. And we realized that very quickly. We started going into the schools in Oakland and San Francisco and telling young men that because they're men.
Were you invited into the schools?
Right. We went in to do workshops and trainings.
Okay.
And we went into saying, okay, you're men and you've got all this power. You're hurting the women around you, which was true.
To the young men, to the boys in the schools?
Right.
Uh-huh.
And they were saying, well, we're not powerful. We're men of color. We're poor and working class. We don't have a lot of power in the society.
Yeah.
And so in order for us to talk to them as people, as full range of complex human beings,
yes.
we had to be talking about all of those issues together. that's part of what led to talking about parenting and teaching and boys and male socialization, but it also led to the work on racism, on economic issues, and looking at why is it that we live in a society where we raise boys to be men who often turn to violence and abuse towards others? What purpose does that serve? And what can we do about that? How do we get boys out of that? And let me say a couple things about that. One of the things we realized very quickly is that there is a general set of training that all boys get. All boys hear this message: act like a man, be a man, grow up.
I got that.
Right. It's something we all hear at some point. Act like a man, be a man. The message is you've got to be tough, aggressive, in control. You can't show any feelings, you can't cry, and you're not supposed to make mistakes, and you're never ever supposed to act for help.
This is what you mean by the phrase you use in your workshops called the act like a man box.
Right. We came to call it that because it feels like a box. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, be tough, be in control, get in the box. One way we know it's a box is that every time a boy steps out of it, what happens, he starts getting called names, right? Wimp, sissy, girl, mama's boy, fag, punk, you know.
Devastating. Absolutely gets you back in the box. Do whatever you have to do.
Well, and what do you have to do? If you're 10, 11, 12, somebody comes up to you and calls you a fag or a sissy or a girl,
right.
What do you have to do to prove you're in the box?
Punch him out.
You have to fight. So the training is that's the homophobia, the fear of being gay, the fear of.
We got to slow down for the homophobia thing because.
Right.
So let's finish the male box and then do the homophobia. Homophobia is a complex term.
Right, but part of the enforcement of that box is the fear that boys have of being gay, of being called gay, of appearing to be gay.
Appearing to be gay.
Right.
Right.
So that's one of the ways that box is enforced, and that's a systematic message. But what we also realized was that box works differently for different boys based upon race and class. So for instance, two elementary school boys, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, two white boys get into a fight. It's not treated real seriously. You know, boys will be boys, they'll grow out of it, it's just a phase.
Right.
You know, it's just seen as part of learning how to be in the box. Two African American or Latino boys get into a fight, and all of the stereotypes and fears of the adults come down, and, oh, this is a pattern, we better deal with it quickly, it's going to get out of hand, and so they're going to be disciplined more harshly than the white boys, they're going to be expelled or suspended much quicker. That the reaction to boys trying to be in that box is real different based upon the adult stereotypes and expectations.
So you deal with this theme in Boys Will Be Men, that parents have a different set of perceptions and ways of dealing with the fact that they're raising a boy of color or a Caucasian boy or a Latino boy. Talk about that, will you?
Well, it's on the one hand, the boys are getting different responses from the external society.
Society as a whole, right.
Neighbors, friends, teachers, you know, the police. So we have to prepare them differently. The white boys are getting the message is that they should be in charge, that they're going to be successful, they should get ahead. The boys of color often get the message that they're dangerous, they're feared, they're not wanted in school, they're not welcome in the school. And so we need to prepare them differently to deal with the racism and economic class expectations that they're going to deal with. Now, why is that? Well, why do we have this box? Well, let's look at the roles in the society that men are being trained to, you know, prepared for. Well, all of the roles in our society that control people, to keep the system in place, deans, fathers, police officers, security guards, prison wardens, soldiers, all those controlling roles. The box is training for taking your own pain and fear and anger and confusion and turning around and abusing, controlling, maintaining control over others. However, we know that if we look at our society, that it's stratified by race. And so boys of upper middle and upper class, especially white boys, are being trained to be in control verbally, emotionally, to be in offices, to make decisions that control people's lives without using physical violence. Working class and poor white boys are being trained to be in jobs that often are in controlling communities of color, and there aren't jobs for the poorest in our society because our corporations have moved jobs overseas. There's